because I think it's important. Because I think since we do front heavy on the local stuff and then we do only national afterwards, that like we might lose people halfway through.
Yeah.
So if we keep all that till the end, I think that's good. So we're going to do these 4.
Then we could do we'll do Jets and Giants during closing time. So I put them in closing time.
Right.
And we'll stop, kind of almost like take a break, call it, and then we'll do our NFC West preview.
Right.
If we have time, we'll do MLB playoffs.
Right.
Just seeing where the divisions are, where they're stacked and everything. And then we'll just do closing time. That's why I just knocked it down to 6. Thought it'd be a little easier.
But we're doing Jets and Giants at closing time.
Yeah. But I'm saying we're doing NFC West preview.
Right.
Then we'll, like I said, if we have time, we'll just keep it on.
We'll do MLB.
We'll go over the MLB standings, where teams are in the wild card and all that stuff, and then we'll just then we'll close it with closing time.
What do you want to do? Closing time at 6:20, so 20 minutes.
Yeah, that should be enough. I think, especially if we're doing 6, it might even be a little less.
Yeah. Well, no, but that'll give us more time to talk about everything.
Yeah.
Instead of rushing through like we were doing. So let's do 20 minutes, but now we had 6 instead of 8, so we can take a little time. Hello and welcome to the Polar Opposites podcast on polaropposites.podbean.com. We're also on the iTunes and live right now on the Spreaker.com. I'm Matt Stevens. Alongside me, as always,
is Craig Moffitt.
And Craig.
Hey, how you feeling today, buddy?
What a freaking wild ride the Yankee-Red Sox series was this past weekend.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Friday, fantastic. Saturday, you just turn it off. He gives up 5 runs, you just turn it off. Sunday, brutal.
Yeah,
but I knew it. I tweeted out at the Matt Show 365. That's my personal email. You can also follow us, the show, on Twitter at Polar Opposites 1. But on my personal email, as soon as Chapman came in, I was like, here goes the roller coaster ride that is the Chapman save.
Yeah, gotta admit, I'm a little surprised.
I'm not.
No?
I think next year he'll be fine.
Maybe
this is.
You think it's just still the hangover from last year?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, I believe you. Like I said,
I mean, he's throwing 100 miles an hour. It's just, it's straight. And guys are hitting it. It just had to be that guy. See, that, we're going to get to a second, but I just have to say this because I don't think we're talking about the series today because it's over now. It doesn't matter. But if you're a Yankee fan, out of all the frickin' people who could have hit that home run off Chapman, out of all the friggin' people,
Devers, right?
Out of all the friggin' people, it had to be him. It had just not a rookie. It's like his second week in the league, and now out of all it could. Benintendi, fine. Betts, fine. Bogarts, fine. Hell, I would even take in what the hell's the name of the dude playing first base for them? Ah, crap. Mitch Moreland. I would have taken Mitch freaking Moreland. But it had to be the friggin' rookie.
We got a lot to do today. We got a lot to talk about. We'll talk about, we got to talk about the Mets, talk about the Yankees, talk about a little Yankees-Mets drama last week, if you want to call it that.
The Mets are.
All right, we'll talk about the Jets and Giants. Talk about the preseason a little bit later. We have our NFC West preview today that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, we got a lot to do. What's that?
It's the Rams.
Los Angeles Rams.
Right. Yeah. But last week I was saying the Rams instead of the Chargers. I got it this week. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, well, wait. Your cue, you haven't gotten to your cue yet. So let's get there first.
I'm ready to go. We're going to talk about the Chargers later. I'm kidding.
So we're going to do our NFC West preview. If we have some time, we'll go over the wild card races right now. Angels are making a big run towards the wild card. I think right now they're tied with the Yankees technically for the first spot, but the Yankees are like percentage points ahead of them. But there's a lot of other teams chasing both teams, so it's been pretty crazy. The Twins have made a little bit of a comeback, which has been pretty impressive. But let's get started. These are our 4 big topics of the week. A little bit of national and domestic and local sports. So see what I mean?
National is domestic.
Yeah. So, Matty, let's get going. And probably the big story of last week.
Yes.
And that is the suspension of Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games by the NFL for violating the league's personal conduct policy due to multiple domestic violence incidents. I thought it was only 1. Mm-hmm. Apparently, it's like 5, which is pretty disturbing to say the least. 6 games is considered the league standard after the league found substantive and persuasive evidence that Elliott was physically abusive toward his ex-girlfriend, Tiffany Thompson. He'd been accused of 5 incidents of domestic violence in a 6-day span. Elliott will appeal the suspension, with sources saying his legal team could dispute the testimony given by Thompson. Matty, after all is said and done after the appeal, does Elliott serve a 6-game suspension or less?
It might be more.
Really?
Yeah, I was reading a thing today where apparently this 160-page report that the NFL put out they talked a little bit about the stuff that happened with the girl at St. Patrick's Day and all that other stuff, but it didn't come into play when they did the final tally. They just focused solely on this thing. So if he comes back with an appeal where they're going to say, well, we have a pattern of behavior now that you're a jerk of a human being, so here you go.
But in that situation, don't they have to present that to his attorney, like saying, okay, listen, isn't it kind of like full disclosure?
I mean, I guess, but everybody knows he did it. I mean, it was out there. He did it. It wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, there's video. You can look it up on YouTube right now. If you want, you search Zeke Elliott pulls girl's shirt down. I mean, it's right there. But let me just say this, and then we'll go. I think for maybe the first time, the NFL got it right. Because, look, as bad as all of it sounds, and if you read the report, it sounds really bad. There are discrepancies, and whenever the district attorney of that area decides not to try the case, it always means that there's a level of doubt inside the district attorney's head. Now, to be fair, they are always trying to win a case. They are trying to put somebody in prison. If they don't think they can do that, they're not going to bring the case to trial. The NFL doesn't have those standards to stand by. If they find that there is credible evidence, and the DA also said that there was not credible evidence, but they did find that there was domestic abuse, they just couldn't necessarily get a conviction, the NFL can suspend. Keep in mind, MLB did it with Aroldis Chapman. Mm-hmm. Aroldis Chapman was never even taken into custody. The cops showed up at his house. He was suspended for 30 games. Jose Reyes. So there is precedent in sports that you don't necessarily have to be tried or convicted to be suspended. What he did sounds terrible, and I believe the girl more than him.
Okay.
And I think that the NFL finally got it right. And if I see one more meme from a jackwagon Cowboy fan that's like, Josh Brown only got one game, and Zeke Elliott got 6.
Oh, I've been seeing those all over the place. Listen, let's get one thing straight.
Stop.
While I understand, the whole Josh Brown situation was over an extended period of time, the fact is the NFL ruled on it, and it's a done deal. So you can't keep sitting there and saying, well, this guy got this, so why doesn't Zeke get this? This is basically like the standard. This is, I think, the minimum.
It should be.
It's no more than 6 games.
I think he's the first to actually get it, though, for domestic violence.
Now, it depends on if he appeals, and then the appeal process. I mean, with the appeal process, you never know. He might wind up getting 4 games. I don't know. Okay, I don't know what's going to happen because it goes through an arbitrator who is probably almost like an impartial arbitrator. So he may find something that could work in Elliott's favor, or he could find something that doesn't work in Elliott's favor. Here's the one thing I'm not surprised about, besides the Cowboy fan backlash, is Jerry Jones is stunned,
of course,
by the suspension.
Of course,
because apparently he was aware of the evidence before, I think, or during the investigation.
Right.
And he was led to believe that Zeke was not going to get suspended. Well, I guess you were wrong. But here's the problem now. Dallas has been riding a fine line with these character issue guys for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay? Randy Gregory, Ezekiel Elliott, even DeMarcus Lawrence, who had been suspended for 4 games, and the list goes on and on. No one doubts their talent, but you're rolling the dice when certain things like this go down. The thing is, they still haven't learned their lesson today.
No.
Okay? So you have to basically, it's like you live by the dirt, you die by the shovel. Okay? Which is kind of it's an unusual saying, but at the same time, it's the truth. Mm-hmm. If you're basically saying, okay, the guy's loaded with talent, but he's a problem. And everyone knew that when he was first drafted, he was a problem. Okay? But you took the risk on him, and you drafted him, and you reaped the rewards last year when he rushed for like 1,600 yards, and he got, big reason why they were 13-3 last year.
Sure, of course, absolutely.
Okay, but then you knew this was coming in the back of your mind, and now the hammer is officially dropped.
Yeah, the whole thing that makes me laugh is that we still haven't gotten over this mentality of he's my teammate, so I have to defend him. He's my teammate, so I have to take his side of things. There are a couple guys who came out when what's his name? The guy who got signed by Dallas after being on Carolina.
Oh, Greg Hardy.
Greg Hardy. And some guys came out and they were like, we don't want him. Like, we don't like him. I can't. What he did was terrible. But we still have guys on the Cowboys coming out and saying, gonna back my boy and yada yada. You have the owner, who's a huge guy in the NFL and has probably more of the of Goodell's ear than anybody. But that's the best part about this whole thing, right? Is the fact that you found out the other day that Goodell wasn't even involved.
And I'm
he wasn't
convinced,
involved.
And honestly, I'm convinced Jerry Jones treats women like crap. But
Let's be fair. That's the thing. It's like the president's response to what happened in Virginia the other day, where he said that both parties are to blame, like everyone's to blame. No, actually not, because so it's like what the Cowboys are kind of saying here. Well, I'm sure he might, but it's all right. It's Zeke. He's a good guy. He doesn't really mean those, but he does. He did it. He's a bad guy.
And the thing is,
he's a bad guy.
But here's the worst part about it too. If I don't remember, I can't remember 100%. But didn't Zeke come out and make a statement, and he didn't really deny it, but he didn't really admit it. He kind of was neutral.
Yeah, but those statements are tough because they're told by their lawyers they can't say anything, but they're getting asked questions, and these guys aren't as you said, it's not like he's nimble with the tongue. Yeah. You know what I mean? He might be with the feet, but when it comes to the speaking, But finally, and then we'll get on to the next one because the next one's actually a big story as well, just actually on the field, thank God. Yeah. Is this. The NFL is starting to trend in the proper direction here, which is a good sign because the era of saying, well, we play a very physical and tough game, and we have a lot of pent-up frustration, and sometimes we have to beat our women to get our frustrations out, needs to end. It needs to stop. Just because you play football doesn't mean you get to beat your wife. It's just not the way it goes. There are plenty of people who do violent jobs for a living, military, police officers, firefighters, people who work as paramedics, who don't beat their wives when they go home. So there's no reason that you should have to, too.
And the one thing I will say is that, regardless of how it happens, for example, and I'm not saying it happens very often, but maybe sometimes, women hit their men,
sure,
get into an argument. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it does happen.
Sure, of course.
Okay? I think at the end of the day, if that guy hits her back, he's going to look 10 times worse.
Oh, yeah.
You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? So it's you really, this is a very, very touchy subject in society today to begin with. With athletes, it's magnified 10 times, 100 times worse. And the thing is the problem with Elliott is it's not one incident.
No.
It's a pattern. It's a pattern.
Yeah.
And maybe when he was at Ohio State, they swept it under the rug because he's Ezekiel Elliott and he's a running back, and Ohio State's always competing for the national championship. And that's a fact.
Sure.
Because I wouldn't doubt it for a minute if schools do that crap. Okay? If this guy gets arrested, or I think we even talked about it a while back with a Florida State player that maybe I think he assaulted somebody or whatever, but they didn't really go to trial because it was I don't remember the whole story, but the fact is that schools, I totally can see sweeping them under the rug. Okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's be honest.
Well, because the money that he's going to make is not. They don't care about what's going to happen to that girl.
Yeah, and the thing is, let's call it what it is. You're not. The next president of the United States is not coming from Ohio State. Let's call it for what it is. It's a football factory, as far as I'm concerned.
Can you really say that anymore?
Maybe not, but it's
Can you really say that anymore?
Well, let's call Ohio State what it is. It's a football factory.
Yeah.
It's an athletic factory.
And we're going to talk about that later, right?
Okay. Yeah, we're going to talk about that with later on during the stuff. But the thing is that all they really care more about is winning national titles, taking their basketball teams to the Final Four, and all that stuff. So I think they do look the other way when these things happen, and it's pretty disturbing because if they don't learn it now, they're never going to learn it when they become a pro.
Well, yes, but at the same time, and this is what I think should just be true for everybody, whether you're a football player or not, doesn't matter what you do. Let's just live by this one rule, and I guarantee you, we will all be happier. You ready for this? Real simple.
Should we say it together?
Don't hit each other.
And don't smoke weed.
What?
Until you retire.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That was
yeah.
the rule.
Yes. Once you retire, I'll roll up with you. It's totally fine. I'll bring it to your house.
But it's a fact.
Don't hit people. Let me say this, guys. Look, I've had girlfriends where you get into fights and you just get enraged by either stupidity or nonsense. And yes, there have been times where, you just want to grab somebody and shake up really hard. Anybody who's listening to this, you felt that way. But we haven't done it. Punch a wall, punch a door, punch a pillow. Go outside and punch a brick wall. You won't punch anything after that. Just don't hit people. Because every time you do,
it just
not only is it bad, you're losing money.
Yeah. You're opening up just a can of worms you don't want to open. But at the end of the day, the NFL got it right as far as I'm concerned, as far as Matt's concerned. A 6-game suspension is definitely justified, and he won't come back, barring any type of reduction, because we don't know yet. The first game I think he's due back is October 23rd against the 49ers.
He at least won't be there for game 1.
Yeah, he won't be there for game 1.
Number 2, the Washington Nationals avoided a major scare after Bryce Harper injured his knee during a game last week against the Giants. Initial reports said it was a possible torn ACL, but it turns out Harper has a deep bone bruise, and although there is no set timetable for his return, manager Dusty Baker thinks it will be anywhere between 10 days and 2 weeks before he's back on the field. Craig, is this injury easier to digest with the Nationals so far ahead in the NL East?
Yes and no. I say yes because, what are they, 11 games out in front now of whoever's in second place? I think it's Atlanta or Miami.
Right.
So in that sense, you get time. It's going to take a miracle for any of those teams to come back on you. So losing Bryce Harper for a few weeks is not exactly the end of the world because it's not like you're really clinging to your first place lead. Unless the Nationals just completely crap the bed in the last month or two, which I don't really see happening in the foreseeable future. However, it is bad because it does take that bad out of your lineup, and I don't know if...
It's 13 and a half, by the way.
13 and a half. Yeah. So, yeah, it would be a freaking miracle. and who's in second? Miami?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be a miracle if any of those teams made a huge comeback to overtake the Nationals. It's not going to happen. It's easier to digest in that sense because then, look, you don't need them. If you really need somebody in a pinch, you might be able to get somebody before the waiver deadline, which is a possibility. There was even talk about the Nationals being interested in Curtis Granderson. I heard about that this morning. In some ways, though, here's the problem. A bone bruise is a pretty serious injury.
Yeah, that timetable seems really,
and the thing is,
weak to me.
You know who I remember had a bone bruise? Carlos Beltran, when he was with the Mets. I think very towards the end before, and he was out for a long time. It was a lot more than 2 weeks. It was more like a month and a half that he was out because it's not like something you get on your arm where it heals in a couple of days and you're able to go back. With baseball, just like every other sport, when you're using your legs to run the bases, steal, whatever, that's extremely painful. So to me, that's where I would be nervous because I don't think it's going to be 2 weeks. I think it's going to be a lot longer. I think it's going to be at least a month, or they're going to give him as much time as possible to come back.
I would literally bring him back the last week of the season. Was
now,
that 4 weeks from now?
Yeah, I would. That's fair. Now it becomes a case with the Nationals. How do you fix it? Basically, who do you put in that position? Do you try to go out and get somebody at this stage in the game? Maybe a team that's looking to just unload a salary. Like I said, maybe the Mets with Granderson. Maybe I know the Blue Jays put Bautista on waivers, but I don't know if Washington would make that move. I'm just throwing out a couple of names. I don't know what they would do, to be very blunt. But yeah, in some ways it's easy because you're in a comfortable spot late in the season. You're 13 and a half games up. You're not going to go... This team is not built to implode this late, I think, in the season. But it's scary because I think Dusty Baker is being a little too, optimistic about his return because I think it's going to be a lot longer than 2 weeks.
Well, I think he's doing that for the fans and for the team. But I'll say this. I think it's terrible no matter when it happens because... the Nationals have to win in the playoffs. They have never won in the playoffs. And since Harper and since this team has been around, they have maybe made it past one round, but they've never made it to the World Series. And some of those times, they clearly had the best team. Now, part of that was Matt Williams taking out, what's his name, with frickin' 2 outs in the top of the stupid... No, it was, he's on the Tigers now. It's Jordan Zimmerman. He is pitching a friggin' gem in the top of the 9th inning with 2 outs. He takes him out and the frickin' bullpen blows it. Then Matt Williams is fired. But
never to be heard from again.
Right, but look, were they beating the Dodgers or the Cubs in the playoffs? Probably not. Without Bryce Harper? Definitely not, right? We can all agree on that, right? I mean, they would have to play so far and above their heads to win that series without him. They'd have to play really well to win it with him.
Yeah. It's
bad for a couple reasons, but mostly because this was that year for the Nationals, right? They went out, they made some trades, they got Doolittle, and they got the other guy for the bullpen.
Yeah.
Zimmerman at first.
They got 3 guys for the bullpen. They got Madsen, Doolittle, and Kinsler.
Right, and Kinsler. And Zimmerman's having a freaking amazing year. Freaking
Murphy's
still killing it. Like we all thought, it's just going to be 1 year for Murphy. It's not. It's now him.
Yeah.
And like they're just they had the injury with Eaton at the beginning of the year. Then the fast kid, I can't remember his name.
Trey
he got hurt.
But I think he's coming back.
He's coming back, but still, that's you're talking about 3 guys. You lose those 3 guys. The fact that you're 13 games up shows you just how many injuries the other teams had, how bad they were. But ultimately, this is going to come down to one thing. If he's not back for the playoffs, this is the worst thing that could have happened to this team because at a certain point, like, if Bryce Harper leaves in free agency, this was all for nothing. They spent all this money for nothing to not even make the World Series.
You're basically going to have another year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's it.
And the thing is, I think in 2019, I think Murph's a free agent too.
And, he's also going to be like 35, 36. Teams aren't going to necessarily touch him.
But at the same time, you're talking, Strasburg's a free agent. I think Strasburg's coming up. Zimmerman's coming up.
No, Strasburg signed that long-term.
He signed that long-term thing. Okay. So you have Harper, Zimmerman, Murph. And then what are you going to do?
That's your team.
Yeah. So this might be the next 2 years are going to be crucial for the Nationals to win a title.
And let's be fair, they got totally boned by the fact that the Dodgers just have this unending group of young people who keep coming up and playing better than the veterans.
I think if I remember,
the Cubs are starting to get back together.
I think if I remember right, the Nationals farm system is not nearly as good as.
Well, they traded everybody away for Adam frickin' Eaton.
Number 3, after losing an important series to the Red Sox, the Yankees took the first game of the Subway Series last night, beating the Mets 4-2 on late homers by Aaron Judge and Aaron Hicks. Boston lost a makeup game last night to the Indians, which put the Yankees 4.5 games out of first in the NL East, and tied with the Angels for the first wild card spot. Sunday's loss came after Aroldis Chapman blew his 4th save of the season in the 9th inning and allowed the winning run to reach base before being pulled in the 10th. Matty, should Joe Girardi consider taking Aroldis Chapman out of the closer's room?
No, you can't do that. If you want...
Well, if you talk to 500 Yankee fans that called the stations today...
But let me just say this. 4 saves. He's blown 4 saves. Now, I know a lot of them have been tight ropes where you've had your heart in your throat. If you look at the average of closers in Major League Baseball, more of them have more than 4 blown saves. So everybody just relax. It's just this happened with Mariano when he used to blow saves against the Red Sox. Everybody loses their frickin' mind, as if a loss to the Red Sox counts more in the standings than a loss to any other team, which it doesn't. Because here's the thing: the Yankees, because the Red Sox lost yesterday and the Yankees won, it's like the weekend series never happened. Look, he's not been great this year. But you can't look. The guy's going to be your closer for the next 4 years. You signed this huge contract. Can you do things like what you did yesterday, where you didn't have him close because he pitched too many pitches the day before? I think they could be more fluid with it. I don't think it's one of those things where they have to say, if he seems like he has a cranky outing the night before, maybe he doesn't close the next day, and you give him extra rest. Maybe that's the key to it. But no, in a big spot, he has to be your closer because that's what he's going to be for the next 4 years. You're paying him closer money. He's not going to not be the closer. He's going to be the closer. So if you take him out of it, it's just going to make it worse in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you because, to be very honest, the Yankees have 3 pitchers that could basically slide into that role if you need to, or 2 pitchers basically if you need to give Chapman a day off. That's Robertson and Betances, but Betances has really struggled in the past as a closer. So as a one-off, if you replace Chapman with a guy like Betances, I actually think it's a little bit of a downgrade because Chapman is still a pretty solid closer, even though every time he has a rough game, they're ready to just run him out of the closer position. Robertson is capable of handling the closer role too. So just like you said, being fluid with it is definitely, and especially this late in the season because, the Yankees right now are in the wild card. They're only 4.5 games out. And I say only because I think they can make it up. I think it's easy to make it up.
They have at least 6 more games with the Red Sox, at least.
And after they sweep the Mets, right?
They're not going to sweep the Mets. They're not winning tonight.
You're really going to side with the Sonny G?
I'm giving up I always give up the DeGrom game.
This is going to be a 3-2 game.
Stop.
Right?
Stop.
Totally
Stop.
Is. Right? 3-2 Yankees.
Stop.
Right? And then by Friday, they'll only be a half game out of first place, and then they'll be into the Red Sox.
Stop. Would you stop?
I was working on that
all the time.
Stop. But in my opinion, no. I don't think, just like you said, they signed him to big money. He is the closer. Okay? That's what he does. That's what he's been in Cincinnati. That's what he was in New York the first time around. That's what he was in Chicago. I wouldn't change it up just because he's hitting a little bit of a rough patch here and there. But then again, if it keeps happening, then you got to think about it. But right now, you can't. I mean, four blown saves to me is not a lot.
No.
Like, it's not a lot to me. But I think it's just because
But two of them were against the Red Sox.
Here's the thing: you exclude from the pool. Yankee fans get really, really nervous around this time of year, especially if they see stuff like this. If it's like a big series against the Red Sox and they had the win, and then he blows the save, and right away they want to run him out of the closer position.
Okay, but let's be fair. We did the same thing to their closer in Boston when Matt Holliday hit the home run. I mean, like, it happens, guys. And when you play a team...
Although I do believe Boston fans are probably trying to run Kimbrel on.
Oh, they were absolutely. But those are fans that are idiots. Those are fans that only watch Mariano. And forget about the fact that Mariano blew like 5 saves a year. It happened. A lot of them against the Orioles and the Red Sox. Mm-hmm. Because when you play a team 19 times, you're going to see that guy a lot. And let's be fair. Look... I was mad. The reason I was mad at him blowing the save was not because he blew the save. I was mad because he threw a fastball. He had blown 2 fastballs by that kid, right? 2. And then he tried to hump it up again. That kid is sitting fastball. And he's sitting like 100-mile-an-hour fastball. That would have been the perfect time to throw one of those like little slider hooks in there.
Vaseline ball.
Yeah, you know, get a little jalapeno on your fingers, rub it in your nose, get the snot running. You know, but you know what I'm saying, right? That's my problem with Chapman this year. Is that when the fastball's working, he won't go to something else. It's almost better if his first fastball he throws is not good, because then he tries to throw the other pitches, gets those going, and then he goes back to the fastball.
That's a sound you need to get when he's teaching Vaughn
how
to talk to the ball.
Need a little Vaseline on my fingers, rub it in my nose.
No, he pumps his head. He goes, "Vagisil."
Yeah. No, that's on the pocket.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's on my hip. Vagisil.
Crisco.
Give you another 2 to 3 inch drop on your curveball. I don't even know what Bardol is.
I don't know.
I assume it's like a hair product, right?
It's an 80s thing, I guess. I have no idea.
I don't know. Or maybe even older. That dude's pretty old. Number 4. The Mets and Yankees took shots at each other last week regarding trades that never happened between both clubs. Shortly after the Mets announced they traded Jay Bruce to the Indians for a minor league pitcher and a full salary relief, it was reported that the Yankees offered 2 prospects and would pick up some of Bruce's salary, but the Mets said no. It's widely presumed the Yankees leaked the details of what they offered to make the Mets look bad. There were also reports the Mets and Yankees had discussed the deal for Neil Walker. I don't know why, but the Yankees backed out at the last minute due to Neil Walker's medicals, which pissed off some of the Mets executives, which I don't know why. Craig, what do you make of all this Met-Yankee drama?
Not much. I mean, to be honestly, I didn't even know the Yankees were interested in Jay Bruce.
Right. Well, where are you going to?
Well, and that's what I was saying. Where are you going to play him?
I mean, maybe first base.
I mean, you can't play him in right field because of Judge. If you get Bird back, you're not going to be able to play him at first base either.
But here's what they do need. They are lacking left-handed power right now. All their power is from the right. I mean, Didi hits home runs, but he's not a power hitter. They don't have a guy who, when he comes up left-handed, you're like, holy crap, this guy's going to hit a home run in Yankee Stadium. They just don't. Now, all their right-handed hitters hit home runs like left-handers. So,
Now, here's the other thing. I don't blame the Yankees for backing out of a deal for Walker. First of all, I don't understand why they would want Walker.
Yeah.
But apparently they were interested in him.
Because they're worried Castro might not be coming back.
Okay. Well, that's fair.
Right? I mean, it has to. It's the only thing I can think of.
Maybe. But, I mean, I've heard nothing to the contrary that he's been delayed or maybe take a step back.
Right, but he's not even doing rehab starts yet. So, you start to get worried. It's a hamstring. It's one of those things that lingers.
Now, here was the weird thing about the story, because there was more to it than that, because apparently, they were talking about a deal for Neil Walker, but then the Yankees backed out. They wound up making the deal for Sonny Gray.
Right.
So then my first assumption was, would the Yankees seriously offer one of those 3 prospects they traded for Sonny Gray to the Mets for Neil Walker, and that's why the Mets are so pissed?
No.
Either way, look, teams back out of deals all the time. I mean, you got to just kind of deal with it. You grin and bear it, and you move on.
Yeah.
Okay? And listen, what were really the odds that the Yankees and Mets are going to make a deal?
Well, but here's the thing that bugged me about it, is I saw somebody from the Mets, or somebody tweet about the Mets, saying the Mets said, well, you have one of the highest payrolls in baseball, but they won't take $3 million.
But that's their decision.
But also, they're trying to do something, guys. They're not perennially cheap like you are. They're trying to get under a threshold for 1 year. And if that $3 million puts them over it, no, they don't want it. And if you're the Mets, if you're a Met fan right now, what should piss you off the most about this is that everybody who I've heard talk about this says that what the Yankees offered was significantly better than what was given to them.
Well, what did they offer?
They offered 2 prospects, which is
one?
already better than the one you got for $3 million. Right?
Look,
The Mets basically paid $3 million or accepted $3 million in a player for Jay Bruce.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the Mets didn't want to help the Yankees out to an extent, and I think that whatever they wanted to make, they felt the Indians deal was better.
But I'm not even talking about it from that perspective.
I'm not a scout, so I don't know exactly who this guy is they got.
2 is better than 1.
Maybe
2 is better than 1. When you're talking about single A prospects or double A prospects, 2 is better than 1 because you have double the chance of one of those guys actually hitting.
Or double the chance of them all failing.
Right, of course, but let's be fair. At this point, like, you can still sign Jay Bruce back. You're not going anywhere. So to me, like, this is the problem I have.
But here's the problem with the waiver deadline deals to begin with. You know, if you trade a guy like Jay Bruce now instead of before the trade deadline, you're basically trading him for 50 cents on the dollar. You're not going to get what you hope, or you're not going to get really anything for him. So I'd rather just play it out the rest of the year at this point. I mean, what's the big deal?
I don't mind getting the prospect. What I mind is just for $3 million. We're talking about $3 million. Like, if it was $14, $15 million, I'd be like, all right, the Mets made a good choice there. That's a lot of money. It's $3 million. Like, for a player.
I mean, think about it like this, right? This is why I always tell you I don't want Sandy Alderson back next year. Okay? After trading Addison Reed, trading Lucas Duda, trading Jay Bruce, and trading Neil Walker,
right?
They've only saved $11 million. That's not a lot of money. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and if they trade Granderson, I think they may save another $2 million because they're going to probably have to pay some of that. I don't think whoever takes Granderson on is probably not paying full price for Granderson.
No.
Okay. So in that sense, what is the point of trading these guys at this stage? If you can't trade them before July, and a team comes calling for we really need Jay Bruce, you got to find a way to just either screw them on it or not.
But that's the Mets, right? They're always trying to deal with the bottom line as opposed to trying to necessarily win all the time.
I forgot who I was talking. It was Francesa. I was listening to Francesa the other day, and like I don't listen to him very often, but I just happened to listen to him on Monday.
Just interrupt everybody.
What?
Just interrupt everybody.
Well, he was doing like a monologue. He wasn't. He didn't take calls yet, but yeah, he did interrupt pretty much everybody.
Yeah, everybody.
Like, although some people that call that show deserve
it. Absolutely.
So what he basically said was like the point he was trying to make was that the Mets don't owe anybody an explanation as to why they made the deal. Fine, you're right,
of course.
But he also said this: if you're making deals like that, which are basically salary dumps, and you don't put it back into the team, then that's a fan problem.
Yeah.
Okay? Because now the fans see that you're not really doing anything. You're just dumping these guys for no reason. You're basically becoming the Miami Marlins.
Right. So next year, you go spend $11 million on another player. But you're not going to do that because you're the Mets.
See, but here's what I guess my only concern with next year is I don't know who's a free agent next year. I don't even know how good the free agency class is.
Of course.
2019 is probably the time where I would say, okay, now I want to start spending some money.
Right. But I'm saying that they're not going to. As
long as Sandy Alderson is the general manager of this team, they will not.
But I think it's actually beyond that now, because here's the thing. I think the Cespedes signing is going to really, really, really hurt the Mets in the future. Because I think they saw it this year. He's hurt a bunch. He's all bulky. He's got leg problems. And he's not hitting him. Listen, I'm not saying that it was a bad signing. I'm not saying they shouldn't have signed him. That's not what I'm saying. But if he ends up not being great for the next 3 years, they're never going to sign a guy like that again.
Now, you and I know that you can't think
of
like that.
Of course.
But
they thought that with Vlad Guerrero. They were gun shy from the frickin' Bobby Bonilla deal, and they didn't sign. That was like 10 years before they didn't sign Vlad Guerrero.
And then think about it like this. Another deal that they're probably will even make them more gun shy is David Wright.
Yes.
Because David Wright got his big money. And
the outfielder that was on the Red Sox that came to you guys and sucked from Pirates.
Oh, Jason Bay.
Jason Bay. Let's be fair, the Mets have not had great.
But that's what's going to scare them off.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in trades, they usually do pretty well.
Now, I hope that's not the case, but like I said, I still think as long as Sandy Alderson is the general manager of this team, they're always going to be penny pinching. They're always going to be going after guys like.
That's the owner.
They're going to be going after guys on their third contracts rather than their second.
Let me say this to you. If Sandy Alderson was the GM of the Yankees and was acting the same way, I would say that you were absolutely right about him. But I can't know if it's Sandy Alderson really being that way, or if the Wilpon saying, this is what you got, go and try and be good with it. You know what I mean? Because you don't know. Is it out of the realm of possibility that
It's
the
not.
Wilpons
No, I
are
don't
like,
think it's out of the
here's
realm of
$10,
possibility.
go buy a $100 car?
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but I also think that's how Sandy Alderson made his name in Major League Baseball in many ways, was not giving guys lucrative contracts. He's never been big on it, even when he was with Oakland.
Yeah.
He was never big on it. So he brings it to the Mets. If this was Manaea, we wouldn't have this problem right now, because I think he would still go after big money guys, because that's how he was. He would sprinkle in the rookies and all that stuff, and he would basically go after big guys that he wanted to go after. Plain and simple.
You want to do some NFL?
Sure. But first, this is the Polar Opposites podcast. As always, check us out at polaropposites.podbean.com, as well as iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at polaropposites1. And we're also on Spreaker.com. Maddie, time to continue our NFL preview. And we are now doing the NFC West.
Los Angeles Rams, baby!
Good. It was very...
See, I told you.
What people don't know is that Maddie's been reading from a piece of paper to make sure he didn't forget this.
I wrote it in my hand.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, listen, I learned a lot from high school, how to write things on your hand, and then you can just read it off and put it on the test.
Yeah, way to go.
We're going to start with the Rams because...
Were they the worst? They weren't the worst, though.
No, the Niners were the worst, but...
Well, we always do worst.
Oh, fine. No, let's do it.
No, I'm very... Hold on, wait, stop.
Yeah,
stop.
No, I can't.
Stop.
I can't. I've already done it. It's too late. It's too late. I've already done it. Okay, so let's start with our good friend, Kyle Shanahan. Our friend and buddy. If you know the show at all, if you've ever listened to the show, you know our favorite coach in the whole world is Kyle Shanahan. And we can't wait to see how well he's going to do with the 49ers.
You want to know what bothers me about them this year? I was reading a CBS Sports article today about this 49ers.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, you want to talk about
blowing
praising
smoke.
John Lynch, who has no experience as a general manager whatsoever, but apparently he is the perfect fit for the San Francisco 49ers.
Of course.
And how Kyle Shanahan is going to be this great coach, and they're building a foundation. Okay? I don't really know what that foundation is, outside of a few rookies.
And Pierre Garçon.
Yeah, but maybe you could tell me.
Well, because here's the point, right? You can look at any team, and you could have the greatest. Look, you could have Bill Belichick as your coach, right? But if Brian Hoyer's your quarterback, you're not winning a Super Bowl. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is.
You're not going to win 6 games with Brian Hoyer.
No, and especially with the rest of the offense. I mean, they got Pierre Garçon. They still have I would say about probably above average offensive line, although I'd probably put it in like the 10-12 range of good. They still have some good players there. I mean, Carlos Hyde is a good running back, but he's always hurt. And then you have Hightower behind him, who's always hurt. And then, it does. Look, let me put it this way. If I'm a defensive coordinator and I look at this team, I'm putting 8 guys in the box.
So much pressure on Brian Hoyer.
I'm putting 8 guys in the box, and I'm putting 2 guys on Garçon. I'm going to say, there you go. Everybody else try to beat me.
But even okay, I'll even give you another one. So this year in the draft, in the 3rd round, they drafted C.J. Beathard, the quarterback from Iowa.
Yes.
Which a lot of people projected was a reach. He had 1 game in the preseason where he played okay against a lot of 3rd stringers and 2nd stringers and everything like that. And it's like, oh, he looked impressive in his first game, and I'm like, see what I mean? Like, this is what I'm talking about. It's a terrible double standard sometimes in the NFL, because the 49ers, although they've added a few veterans here and there, they're not doing anything different that maybe the Jets aren't doing or other teams like the Browns aren't doing. I mean, they're rebuilding.
Yes, but I think what happens is that they're rebuilding.
It's almost like they want to see Kyle Shanahan succeed with the 49ers.
Of course they do. His last name is Shanahan. But for me, it's this. I think when I say that I like what the 49ers are doing, I'm talking about one thing. And that's they gave their GM and their coach 6-year contracts. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Look, and if it's 6 years, they suck. It was a bad deal. But what we talked about with the Jets last week, right? Where Bowles doesn't know if he has a job next year, and McCagnon doesn't know. I think McCagnon's safe. He's safe.
I actually think at the end of the day, Bowles will be safe.
I do too, but the mentality isn't the same. So Kyle Shanahan knows he's not going to be fired this year. He can go 0-16 and be terrible, and he knows he's not going to be fired because he has a 6-year contract. So they can afford to play the long game and do it the right way by building through the draft and bringing in veteran free agents. Now, whether or not they do that right is a completely different story. So from that perspective, I think they are doing it right. Let me put it that way. Now, they have to make the right moves. But we don't know if they're going to be right yet. Bringing Pierre Garçon in is a good start, not a great start, because Pierre Garçon is going to be done in 2 years. And that's going to be right at the beginning or the middle of your rebuild.
And when he's your primary option at receiver, and it's not a good thing.
Because he's not that player anymore. He's just not.
The worst part about it is like we talked about, is they're very... Carlos Hyde is one of those really frustrating players because he has so much potential to be a good back, and he can never stay healthy. But even when he's playing, he's ineffective.
Yeah.
And you can blame him. You could throw some of the shade onto the offensive line, and that's fine. But he's got to make plays, and he doesn't make plays on this team.
Real quick, the defense is good, not great.
They're young.
They're young. They have a good secondary, good safeties.
Which leads me to that. Okay, when this goes back to Lynch. Okay, it's very easy to look like GM of the year when you have the number 3 pick in the draft and you draft a pass rusher that everybody loves, that most mocks have you taking.
Right.
It's very easy to say that. And then, of course, you come back into the first round, and you wind up drafting Reuben Foster. You caught a break on Reuben Foster mainly because teams were scared of the issues that took place at the combine.
Right.
Where he yelled at that medical guy or whatever, and he got kicked out.
Right.
Okay? It's very easy to look like GM of the year. Okay? But now comes the tough part. Now you got to see if these guys pan out, which is going to take a couple of years. Then you got to figure out what you're going to do with your next, because you can't just... Yes, you can rebuild through the draft. You can build your whole team through the draft if you want to, but then you got to find the right veterans to put in there. And that, it blows my mind that this guy's been a GM for 2 months with no experience, and everybody makes it sound like he's just this amazing general manager that just came out of nowhere and this is the guy that's going to lead the 49ers to the promised land once again.
Well, yes, there is that. But the other thing too is, and let's be fair, we've watched enough NFL drafts to know that good GMs never ultimately worry about if their first round pick is going to hit, right?
Sure.
Your first round pick should
it's a
start,
given,
right?
It's a given.
Right.
And in some ways, your second round
screwed it up.
Yeah, and in some ways, your second round pick should play not necessarily start,
right,
but play a valuable role in your game plan for the season.
50% of the snaps, is that fair? Let's
Absolutely.
even just say I'm on the low side. So to me, it's never about who your first and second round picks are. It's who your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round picks are.
Those are the picks you need to hit on.
Right, because if you hit on those picks, your depth is going to be immense, and that's how you win football games. So it's attrition, right? The season is attrition. How many players do you have healthy who are good more than the other team at the end of the season?
Yes.
And so if you draft on those, so we haven't seen that with him yet. So we'll see how that progresses as we go. The first 2 picks this year were great, but you took a shot on a guy. If Reuben Foster goes out and punches somebody in the face at a nightclub, that's a bad pick.
Yeah.
Just the way it is.
On to the Los Angeles Rams.
Yes.
Making a big trade, getting Sammy Watkins.
Yeah.
The day after Buffalo lost their opening preseason game, which is interesting, but we'll talk about that during closing time.
Yeah.
What's kind of funny is that with the Rams, new coach, Sean McVay, Wade Phillips is defensive coordinator. But I get this vibe from reading a lot about the Rams and a few articles and stuff like that, that everybody's pretty much... Jared Goff is officially a failure after 1 year, which is a bit extreme.
Yeah.
Okay. Number one, he was running a Jeff Fisher offense.
Yeah.
I rest my case. Yeah. Okay. The second thing was Todd Gurley was freaking horrible last year, and I think that played a huge role in Goff not being very good. And oh yeah, by the way, they had arguably the worst wide receivers I've ever seen. Yeah. Okay.
When Tavon Austin is your one,
and they gave him a $42 million extension. To do
as a slot receiver, kick returner, stuff like that, he'd be great. If you put Tavon Austin in his strength, which is slot receiver, kick return, punt returns, all that stuff, he's absolutely worth that money because he's going to score a lot of points for you.
Now, before the Watkins trade, I was even more concerned with Los Angeles because outside of a few rookies and maybe second-year players, the only big signing they made at wide receiver was Robert Woods, who was basically a third-string receiver for Buffalo.
Here's all I'll say about this. And the Watkins trade, we'll get to that in a little bit, but is it really the best idea to co-opt the Buffalo Bill wide receiving core to be your wide receiving core after Buffalo has literally never done anything on offense?
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Come on, guys. Come on, LA.
So,
be better.
They make a couple of moves. They bring in Whitworth as one tackle. They finally unload Craig Robinson, who was a colossal failure. They make the deal with Buffalo to get Watkins, but at the same time, they gave up draft picks.
Yeah,
which
which is
they need.
dumb.
They need draft picks.
Well, because
And
Watkins is a
and
free
they have
agent.
high draft picks.
Watkins
too.
can walk, right? He's a free agent at the end of the year.
They
didn't do
declined
that.
the 5th year. So you're talking about basically you've backed yourself into a corner to give this guy a long-term deal, because if you don't, you basically gave up what I think is a 3rd-round pick and a corner to get Watkins, who's been a bust.
Yeah.
I think he's been a bust.
No thinking about it.
Injuries have killed him to an extent, but he has not been the playmaker that everyone expected him to be.
And they traded up to get him. The Giants took
They
Odell.
traded 2 1s to get him.
And the Giants just took Odell where they were.
Yeah. So I'm saying, when you look back on it now, you wish you would have had that opportunity back. But at the same time, Buffalo could have, and I think, wasn't there another receiver? Mike Evans was in that draft too.
Yep.
Another guy who was better than Watkins.
Yeah, he gets hurt a lot too, though.
Okay. Outside of that, with Los Angeles, this is basically a grooming year for Jared Goff and a new offense with Sean McVay.
Yeah, you can't give up on Jared Goff yet. It was a year in a Jeff Fisher offense. Unless you're a running quarterback, a Jeff Fisher offense will kill you. The defense, listen, I actually think this defense could be pretty good this year, mostly because Wade Phillips is an awesome defensive coordinator. He is a great defensive coordinator. Another reason why I think the Broncos will be a little bit lower this year, even though ESPN came out with their power rankings this year. That's some part.
Oh. Is that as good as the preseason Week 1 winners and losers?
The Giants were 11.
11?
And the Cowboys were 6.
Even after this Elliott suspension?
Yeah. Oh. ESPN riding the Cowboy jock all the way.
No, you know what though? It's not just ESPN. It's everybody. It's everybody, and it's all the more reason why I just think the Giants are just going to mop the floor with them. I think Week 1. I just can't. It's truly mind-boggling why everybody's on the Cowboys so much. Real quickly with the Rams. Yeah. You're right about Goff. You can't really. You got to give this guy more time, especially and give him something. I mean, Watkins. Hopefully Watkins being there will make him better.
Well, it should, right? Assuming he's healthy.
Here's my question: on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a Rams fan, how nervous are you about Aaron Donald holding out?
I think Aaron Donald will play once the season starts. That never usually ends well for that player. They usually get some sort of injury because they don't have training camp or training camps.
Same.
But I think he will play when it comes time to, and I think he should play. I mean, look, you're only making $1 million, right, or whatever the stupid rookie wage scale is. So yeah, hold out if you want to, but if you pull your hamstring this year and don't play well, and that affects your money next year, you really only have yourself to blame. I mean that, right?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, too, with the Rams is, the secondary, they trade away E.J. Gaines to get Watkins, and they only have Tremaine Johnson, who's probably their best cornerback, on a franchise deal.
Yeah.
And that could really screw them in the long run unless they figure out a way to get him signed to a long-term deal, which they may not even be able to do.
Right.
And I think they're even buried with some bad contracts, and they have to. And Donald is probably more of a priority than Tremaine Johnson. So it'll probably be another year, a long year for Los Angeles, but on the bright side, at least you don't have Jeff Fisher coaching the team anymore.
Indeed, that's absolutely the truth.
On to the Arizona Cardinals, and maybe you'll agree with me, but I think this is the year that if they don't make it, they may have to blow it up a little bit.
They're not going to make it.
Because you have Carson Palmer a year older, you have Larry Fitzgerald a year older, who was contemplating retirement last year.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not. Their receivers outside of Fitzgerald are not great, which means you build a team around David Johnson.
Did you hear what Arian said?
No.
He actually said, he's like, we only have 2 NFL caliber receivers on this team right now.
God bless his honesty. He's probably right.
Well, John Brown and Larry Fitzgerald.
The other guys are not really that great. They've never really addressed the tight end position as more of an offensive weapon. It's been more of kind of like a blocking.
Yeah, but Gresham is good enough in that offense. He should be all right. The running back is good, although that thing scared the hell out of me.
Johnson's
you just feel
really good.
One step and that knee is just gonna,
You know the thing is worries me about David Johnson is they're gonna ride him and he's gonna be just wiped.
He's
gonna get 28 to 30 carries a game because he's their primary offensive weapon. Now on the defensive side, the Arizona still sports a solid D with. They've brought back Chandler Jones. They have Patrick Peterson, the Honey Badger. One guy who I think who really is going to have to step up for them this year is last year's first-round pick, Kim Dichie. Now he's been off to he got off to a decent start in the preseason, and he kind of finished strong last year. But there were a lot of questions about his motor, his motivation in many ways. So this is going to be probably a big year for him.
Yeah,
I think.
Look.
And the thing is, too, that worries me is you have Carlos Dansby, who's a good linebacker, but he's 35.
Yep.
You know,
it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Starting at 35.
Right. Well, and it
just goes to
that's
show
the
you
troublesome part. Though.
Well, no,
It's
but
not
but to me, it's amazing. It just goes to show you how different people are, human beings. Yeah. Just their bodies are. Like that guy can still be starting middle linebacker at 35 years old. Yet we have guys who can't stay on the field who are 10
or like
or 25. Right.
You know.
So
I think again for Arizona, I think this is a make or break year because you have to prepare for life after Carson Palmer, after this year at least, or maybe even halfway through the season if he gets hurt. You're basically building your entire offense around David Johnson. Fitzgerald had a good season last year, but he's another year older.
Yeah, but he's also going to get doubled all over the place.
And the thing is, when you're facing the Seahawks twice, you're facing, even the Rams have a good defense, and Wade Phillips will dial up some good blitzes on Palmer.
Of course.
So in that sense,
And the Niner defense isn't terrible.
But I'm saying this is against a non-mobile quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so this is a little troublesome in my opinion. I mean, what do you think?
Well, it's bad, and you know me, I'm not a Carson Palmer person. I thought that they should have stopped this years ago. I don't think they should have ever gotten from Oakland, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And you say if Carson Palmer will miss games this year, it is guaranteed fact that Carson Palmer will miss games this year. The thing that worries me about this team is we see teams like this, and they can either go one way or the other, right? They can either have that one last run, or it just kind of craps the bed, and everybody is gone, and then they end up blowing it up. And I think that's what's going to happen. You have Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, or however that pronounce a stupid name, who's always missing games as well. I think that Peterson as a cornerback is one of the most overrated cornerbacks in the league. The dude has more penalties against him than any corner you see, who's considered great. And their defense...
that other cornerback spot is not...
It's not great.
Good. Justin Bethel now.
Yeah, and Antoine Bethea is a good strong safety, but he's not the best strong safety.
I'll even go as far as saying Tyrann Mathieu is very overrated.
Absolutely. He is. Because he's made some plays, right? But he's not... He's had the ACL. He's had a bunch of different injuries that have kept him out for years.
He came into the league with baggage to begin with when he's at LSU.
And he never had that baggage in the NFL.
And the thing is, when he makes plays, everybody makes such a big deal, like he turned his life around, he turned his career around.
Right.
Well, I mean, good for him, but he doesn't make... I don't think he makes enough plays to warrant being an elite secondary player.
I think by default, they end up second in the division just because the other two teams are just not good at all, and they're...
But I can see a team like Arizona, man, like losing to a team like the Rams one week, or even losing to a team like the 49ers.
No, they're going to lose one of those games. I'm saying that they will end up in second place in the division, not necessarily sweeping those games, but just because even though Carson Palmer's not great, he's better than Goff and he's better than Hoyer. Yeah. It's just they are. It's like watching paint dry with that team, man. It's hard to watch. They're not good. I have literally no faith that they are going to win and go anywhere this year. Literally, none.
And finally, on to the Seattle Seahawks, who will be first place by default.
Oh, my God. They could basically rest their entire team by the last 2 weeks and have no chance of not winning the division.
This is a team, over the past 2 years, that has had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, and they still win the division. And what does that tell you about the NFC West?
It's bad.
Okay.
Super bad. And
the thing is, this is a team now without Marshawn Lynch, who came back and went to Oakland. They're pretty much bringing back the same offensive players from last year.
Fat Eddie Lacy, who's not fat anymore.
But I mean, again, how many, I don't know what to expect out of Eddie Lacy this year. But again, Jimmy Graham is back at tight end. You have Doug Baldwin, who had a solid year last year. Mm-hmm. Tyler Lockett is more of a deep threat. I think he's like one of those, he's like a Ted Ginn.
Yeah.
He'll catch like 2 balls for 104 yards, and then after that, you won't hear from him for like weeks. Because he'll only score a touchdown on like an 80-yard pass.
Stone hands.
No, the ball is my friend.
Ted Ginn is stone hands.
Right? No, but he actually catches balls compared to
sometimes
Featherstone.
Sometimes.
All right. Sometimes. So you're again bringing back basically the offensive line, which is bad, and you're predicating your team again on defense because you have quality, you have solid defensive players. You have Bennett on the line with Cliff Averill, Sherman and Chancellor, the Legion of Boom, pretty much. Is Earl Thomas healthy right now, or is he like?
I think I haven't heard otherwise. I mean, I'm sure they're like watching him during practice, but I haven't heard that he's not on the pup list as far as I know, or anything like that.
Chancellor just got the new deal. KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, solid linebackers. I mean, this team is predicated on its defense. I mean, that's pretty much what they're going to build build their foundation on. And you have Russell Wilson. And I mean, Russell Wilson didn't have a great year last year because he was getting chased out of the pocket like nobody else.
But that's the thing. You look at that offense and you go through the position players, and you're the one thing that you say is not one of these guys scare me. Not even Russell Wilson to a certain extent. Like if you look at him as a player, like he doesn't necessarily put the fear of God into you.
Sure.
It's not looking at Julio Jones and going, "Oh crap, I got to cover this guy all day."
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a wide receiver even half that guy right now, and their wide receivers are good. But the way they win is their defense stops teams and holds teams to no points. And Russell Wilson runs for his life while receivers get open. He heaves a ball somewhere and somebody catches it. Like their offense is I know there's structure to it, but there's not ultimately structure to it in the end because their offensive line makes Russell Wilson run for his life half the time.
And the thing is, when your running game was so strong when you had Lynch, now Lynch was out last year, he retired, and then they had multiple running backs last year with Thomas Rawls and Christine Michael and C.J. Prozise. Now you have Eddie Lacy, who again he's
fine.
He's fine, and he's not a guy I can count on to carry the load every week.
But let's be fair. He couldn't run the ball with frickin' Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. With teams afraid that Aaron Rodgers was going to throw on you, Eddie Lacy couldn't run the ball.
And to be very blunt, Jimmy Graham, since he's been in New Orleans, hasn't been that great.
No.
He was good last year. The year before, he was horrible.
And he got hurt. And then
so he hasn't really been the impact player the Seahawks were hoping they got when they made the trade with the Saints.
No, it's and look, they're a good team. Their defense is good. Although I'm expecting, their secondary was not great last year. They had a couple injuries.
Sherman was hurt. Sherman was hurt a little bit.
Thomas got hurt for the first time. He missed his first game. Chancellor missed time. Sherman got beat a lot more than he ever had last year, and that's because they lost the guy on the other side, and that allowed him to be a little bit more daring and whatnot. You look at guys like Bennett and Averill and those guys, and yes, but they've been doing this a long time now. You're going to start to see decline.
Yeah.
And the thing that the Seahawks can't have, what they had when they beat the Broncos in the Super Bowl, is that they can't have the depth to where they can change the defensive line every play and have it be just as good as the one that just ran off the field. Because all those guys are gone now. They're gone.
Yeah.
And you don't have the money to have that because you're paying Richard Sherman and Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor and Russell Wilson. You're paying those guys.
That's probably why
now.
they were trying to trade Richard Sherman, too.
Well, of course, absolutely.
Get some salary.
Well, salary and depth. You need depth. So, look, they're going to win the division. They're going to win the division, but
there's nothing the Seahawks did this year compared to last year that makes them leaps and bounds better in 2017.
Right.
They're the same team, and I also think they take advantage of the fact that they do play in a weak division.
They do, and I also think that we can sort of – I don't know if that home field advantage is as big as it once was, because I think teams have now – I think every team has played there. It's not even figuring out the crowd. They know how to play in that environment now. I think it took everybody by surprise in the beginning, and it sort of ruffled some feathers. What's the last to first?
I'm going to do it exactly how it was last year. I'm going to say Niners last because I just think the Niners will be brutal, but I think the Rams won't be too far off. I could easily see them flip-flopping by a win.
2-14, 3-15.
3-13. I mean, for the Rams to succeed, Goff has to take a major step forward this year. Nothing else will really matter. I see the Cardinals second, and I see the Seahawks first. But I see the Seahawks being a 10-6 team, and I see the Cardinals being like 8-8 or 9-7,
which is what they were last year.
Yeah. How about you?
I'm going to flip it.
The Cardinals.
I think the Cardinals are going to. No, I think I'm going to flip the Niners and the Rams.
Okay.
I'm going to give Kyle Shanahan a little pop.
You just want to rip him later
when they finish the baseball game. You're the worst, Kyle Shanahan. You are the worst.
Okay, we're about 2 minutes from closing time. So, briefly on week 1 of the preseason. Me, personally, I don't look too deep into things, especially when it comes to rookie quarterbacks.
Sure.
But I have to admit, it bothers me watching these NFL writers write about how great Mitchell Trubisky was in his first game. And I mean, listen, Glennon couldn't have had a worse game than that. Okay? Even as a starter against, like, the Denver Broncos, I mean, if I had the Animal House clip when Dean Warmer goes 0.0, because that's what his quarterback rating was, you couldn't have asked for it. Now, all the pressure that he had going into that game has now been magnified because Trubisky played better.
Yep.
Okay? But I can't be sold on Mitch Trubisky until I see him play a first team on defense. Or, you still can't justify that pick at the end of the day off of that one game.
No,
Just in general.
no. But let's be fair. It's like the Jets situation, right? Like, why should Glennon start? It makes no sense. The Cowboys aren't winning anything. The Bears aren't winning anything this year.
Yeah.
So should Trubisky just start? But that's the NFL, right? That's 24-hour news cycle crap.
Yeah.
We don't have anything to talk about, so we're gonna do a quick breakdown of the Mitch Trubisky era that started out against a third-team defense
or
in the
against
Broncos,
or against Pat, or when they talk about Pat Mahomes, or when they talk about Deshaun Watson. Like no one doubts that these guys could be good quarterbacks in the NFL, but it's very like, I guess I can't even think of the word to put these guys on a pedestal, and you're writing about them like they're doing awesome. Yeah. Like, they're doing awesome, but then you end your articles with this, but it's only one game.
right? Yeah, kill yourself.
So, I mean, like...
So why'd you write the article?
So the article is officially contradictory, then, because you're basically saying he played great, and he showed all this pocket poise and everything, but it's the preseason, so we can't look too deep into it. But you just did look too deep into it.
That is true.
Okay? So, and I will leave with this. There is no team now more snake bitten in the NFL than the Miami Dolphins.
That could be very much true.
2 defensive players... starters. One guy got hurt. The second-round pick got hurt on the opening kickoff, tore his ACL. And then my friend texted me today saying the cornerback, who I don't know if was going to be a starter this year, also tore his ACL. And he's out. And now Ryan Tannehill officially had surgery.
Indeed.
So 3 huge players for the Miami Dolphins are out for the year, which means the Patriots will now have the AFC East wrapped up by weekend.
Indeed.
Maddie, it is time for closing. Closing time, as always, finishes up our podcast, and we used to do 8, but now we do 6. So it is 6 topics, anything goes, all opinions vary, all opinions legal, and all opinions matter.
No!
Yes,
No!
they do. Maddie, are you ready?
Ho!
All right, here we go. Number 1, a little local flavor for
Indeed.
1 and 2. The Giants lost their preseason opener 20-12 against the Steelers. Most of the starters didn't play, but the same issues that hurt the Giants last year are haunting them again this year. Offensive line struggled, giving up 7 sacks, and the running game failed to impress, with Paul Perkins only gaining 3 yards on 7 carries. Geno Smith, competing for the backup role behind Eli Manning, did throw for 115 yards, but also had 1 pick. Maddie, what did you like and not like about the Giants' performance on Saturday?
You like the defense was really good. I mean, they gave up points, whatever. Like, they're going to do that. Geno had an interception, would put him on a short field. Shocking. I know, Geno interception. Super shocking.
I will say one thing. Geno,
He was-
I thought
he
Geno
was good.
threw the ball well.
He was not bad. And to be fair, right now, he should be the backup because if Eli goes down for a half, Geno Smith can win you a football game.
Josh Johnson can't.
No, absolutely not. And look, yes, of course, everyone's talking about the Giant offensive line, and I agree with you. The Giant offensive line was not great, but it was also Josh Johnson behind center. So there's no guarantee that he got the calls right on the protections. There's no guarantee he got any of that stuff right. Okay, so until I know that, but also Flowers did not have a bad game. He gave up 1 sack, but most guys are. And let's also be fair. The Steeler defensive front, it was starter versus starter, is good. The Steeler defensive line is one of the top 5 defensive lines in the game.
Do you think it was fair for McAdoo to kind of call out Perkins?
No, yes, absolutely.
You thought it was fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was...
Only because it's 1 preseason game. That's why I'm asking.
It is, but he's a second year. And he didn't start last year. You're supposed to be the starting guy now. And my problem is he was... Like last year when he played, he hit the hole and boom, gone, right? In that first game, he looked like he just like went to the line like, maybe I'll go this way. I don't know, and then you get hit. So like I need him to be more decisive and just hit the hole. So I don't mind him calling him out.
It's tough to really gauge this game, mainly because a lot of the starters didn't play, even if they didn't play for a series. The defense played, but the offense really did. The only offensive player that's starting that I think I saw in the game was Evan Ingram.
Yeah.
I don't think Shepard didn't play. I know Marshall didn't play. I know Beckham didn't play.
Right. That's another reason
so
why your offensive...
It's very premature to start ripping the offensive line this early. But again, it just becomes like...
Right, but like if those 3 guys are playing the game, right? The Steeler defense is totally different.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I'll say. From what I saw from Geno was very similar to what I saw when he was on the Jets.
Right.
Was that he can make the throws. Mm-hmm. No one can doubt that he can make the throws. But he always gets put into that horrible turnover, and it's always a backbreaker.
Yeah.
But as a backup to Eli, I would rather have him than have Josh Johnson, and Davis Webb will just be my number 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
So outside of that, I mean, that was probably the only thing. And like I said, I saw Geno make some good throws. He had a bad interception, but overall, If I have to, I'll go with Geno as my backup. I don't have a problem.
And that field goal kicker kid hit a 52-yarder, like boom, like with plenty of room.
And Nugent's not looking too good right now. It looks like this kid is going to make the team.
Ted Nugent, get out of here. Number 2, the Jets' first preseason game was mostly uneventful, but they managed to beat the Titans 7-3. Josh McCown threw a touchdown on the opening drive and also had a 53-yard completion to Robbie Anderson. The defensive sacked Titans quarterback 8 times, including 1 on Mariota. And in his first extended game action since the final preseason game last season, Christian Hackenberg threw for 127 yards, but no scores, and had 1 turnover and a mostly conservative game plan. Craig, what did you like and not like about the Jets' performance on Saturday?
I like the fact that the defense looked like they looked faster. That was one thing I saw. I was at the game. They definitely looked a lot faster. I liked the speed, especially from the linebacker position. Demario Davis looked a lot quicker than his first stint with the Jets. And overall, one thing I loved about the opening drive was they went deep right away, which that's never been their forte, no pun intended. It's always been very, like dink and dunk or like, whatever. But the fact that they went on a 50-yard bomb and the throw McCown made was a friggin' missile to Anderson. So that was actually pretty good. Hackenberg, I thought he played good. He needs to improve, obviously. I mean, don't get it twisted. He wasn't amazing out there. A lot of his passes were like 7-8 yards at a clip, and the 2 times he went a little bit more than that, he was incomplete. He also was victimized by a few drops in that game, like at least 3 or 4 drops I counted. For the second game, I think they need to open it up more. They need to air it out with him a little bit more. They got to see if he can throw deep. I mean, that's kind of a big thing. Mm-hmm. But with the team that they had on the field, I was encouraged by what I saw from that standpoint. The only thing I'll be really nitpicky about, and I will be nitpicky about this, is Christian Hackenberg is pretty much learning at this point. At one point in the game in the first half, it was about a minute and a half left in the game, the Jets were deep in their territory. I said to my dad was with me, I said, this is a time to get him to run a 2-minute drill. Let's see what he can do in a 2-minute drill. Let's see if he can get the team to field goal range. And they didn't do it. They basically just ran the clock out. To me, that kind of bothered me because I need to see if he can run a 2-minute drill.
Yeah.
Even if it is against backups or second stringers or whatever, it doesn't matter. He's got to learn how to run a 2-minute drill because you could have gotten a field goal, and if this was a regular game, you get a field goal, you feel a little more confident going into the half. So that's like one of the things I was nitpicky on. The other thing that worries me is if we lose Forte and Powell for extended time, we're screwed. The running game was the other running backs just weren't really very good in general. But there were some good things and there were some bad things, and that's pretty much I'll leave it at that.
Here's all I'll say about the Jets, and we'll get on to number 3, is that they're going to lose a lot of games 10-3.
Yeah.
13-3. Because their defense is really good, but I have no idea where the points are coming from. Just no idea.
I think it's going to be one of those things as the season progresses, they'll get better, but I think the first few weeks of the season are going to be a little rough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
I definitely agree with that. Number 3, Jaguars running back Leonard Fournette had a strong preseason debut against the Patriots, scoring a touchdown in Jacksonville's win last Thursday. After the game, Fournette was asked how he felt about playing in his first NFL game, and he pretty much said it was easy. Quote, "It's a lot slower than I really thought. That's how I've been since I first got into the NFL. A lot of people were like, it's going to be fast. But by me playing in the SEC, that kind of helped me a lot. I think to me, it was really easy." End quote. Fournette was playing against mostly second-string players when he scored his touchdown and finished the game with 31 yards on 9 carries. Maddie, is Fournette getting ahead of himself after 1 game?
Yes! You averaged 3 yards a carry! 3 yards! That's not even good! All right? If you average 3 yards a carry, you are a backup running back. You are a part of a committee of running backs. And not only that, you did it against like second and third string guys. So does that mean when you play first string guys, you're only going to get 1 yard a carry? And we know this because if you go back and look at Leonard Fournette's career against the best team while he was in college, which is Alabama, he averaged like 1.8 yards a carry against that team. And that's the most NFL-ready college team you'll see, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Now, they wouldn't beat an NFL team. I'm not saying that. But they're the closest thing we have. And against that team, he rushed for like 2 yards a carry. So, Leonard, I appreciate the fact that you don't think it's fast. I think the SEC has nothing to freaking do with it whatsoever. Okay? You can't tell me the SEC is so good that it's NFL ready. It's nonsense.
Let's call it what it is, though. It's not like he plays SEC teams every week.
Right, of course.
He plays like Rice week 1. And like...
So here's the thing. I'll just say this. Leonard, I appreciate your machismo, as it were, but shut the hell up. Because the first week after this, 150 yards on 20 carries. That's what I need to see from you because that's how easy you're making it sound.
Well, I think for me, it's just a case of overconfidence. I think he's a little too cocky, especially, he won his first game. Maybe he's a little too high on himself at this point. But the fact is when you're up against first-string defenses that you're going to be playing Texans with J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney and whoever else the Jags play the rest of the year, you're gonna get a rude awakening to the NFL. And the thing is, the Jaguars haven't been a very good team in a long time, and they're expecting you to kind of carry the load along with Chris Ivory. And I just think that he's gonna get his bell rung. He may have inadvertently put a target on his back when the season starts, but that's a little bit, that's another day. But the fact is that I think he's definitely getting ahead of himself. I just think after one game, he's a little too overconfident about how he performed. But just like you said, he only averaged 3 yards a carry.
Yeah. Number 4. Let me see what are we going to do next here, and then I can do that. We're going to do this. All right. Number 4. One day after the first preseason game under new head coach Sean McDermott, the Bills were busy making trades. First, they traded Sammy Watkins and a 6th-round pick to the Rams for quarterback E.J. Gaines and a 3rd-round pick. And then they traded quarterback Ronald Darby to the Eagles for receiver Jordan Matthews and a 2nd-round pick. While the Bills won't get much from help from the deals this year, both trades have given them multiple picks in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd rounds of 2018 NFL Draft. Craig, have the Bills already waved the white flag on the 2017 season?
It's amazing how it only took one preseason game, and all of a sudden you just unloaded everybody. But, I think they did. I didn't think they were going to be that great of a team to begin with anyway. They're not going to compete for a wild card, and they have no chance at the AFC East, just like the other 3 teams. So, basically, I don't really... I think from a Bills perspective, it's kind of frustrating for a Bills fan because I think they wanted to go into the year with high expectations. You've inadvertently set Tyrod Taylor up to fail now because your receiving corps completely stinks. Granted, you have Anquan Bolden, but he's like 137 years old, and he's a possession receiver. Yeah. That's what he is. He's a 4-catch guy a week. That's all he is. Okay? And, oh, by the way, on top of that, Jordan Matthews in his first practice with the Bills cracked his sternum. So now he's going to be missing some time. So when it rains and pours in Buffalo, and this is no thing. Now, on the bright side, you set yourself up for positive, getting multiple 1st, 2nd, and 3rd round picks. But here's the problem. I think the Bills will do just good enough to get like the 9th pick, which will be their pick. And I think the pick they get in the 1st round is from either the Chiefs or the Texans, which is going to be a playoff pick. Right. So they're going to be picking at the mid 1st round and the bottom of the 1st round. So in many ways, it's like, yeah, it looks great, but unless they're trying to package picks to get a quarterback, which is a possibility, that could easily be it. But I think at this point, McDermott's just trying to clear out some of the dead wood, and I definitely think he's waved the white flag on this season.
Yeah, when you trade, we both agree that Sammy Watkins is overrated and has not had a great career. He is better than Jordan Matthews.
Yeah.
So when you are doing that,
and the funny thing was, I was listening to Evan Roberts, and he thinks that Jordan Matthews is better, and I'm like, no,
you're out of your friggin' mind.
Jordan Matthews was the 4th string on the Eagles this year, and now he's moving up to number 1.
Yeah, he's not good. Yeah, he's not great. And they are, but sometimes it's what you have to do. You get a bunch of draft picks and you go for it. But again, you have to. Is the GM going to make the right picks, right? Yeah. So when you do this, your fans can get behind it, like the Rams did, or when the Washington traded up and they got the RG3. Your fans can get behind you, but you better make the right picks in the next draft, or you're going to get killed.
Number 5, UCLA quarterback Josh Rosen recently did a Q&A with Matt Hayes of Bleacher Report and had an interesting answer regarding school and football. Rosen said, quote, "Football and school don't go together. They just don't. Trying to do both is like trying to do 2 full-time jobs. There are guys who have no business being in school, but they're here because this is the path to the NFL. Human beings don't belong in school with our schedules. It's not that some players shouldn't be in school. It's just that universities should help them more instead of just finding ways to keep them eligible. There's the other side that raises the SAT eligibility requirements. Okay, raise the SAT requirement at Alabama and see what kind of team you have. You lose athletes, and then the product on the field suffers." End quote. Is Josh Rosen right?
Absolutely, he's right. It's sad that a college sophomore understands this better than the people who run the crime organization that is the NCAA. But it's absolutely right. Look, I'm a huge proponent of the NFL starting a minor league where kids who don't want to go to college can go and play 18 and 19. You play NFL, you get paid $50,000.
That was what they were trying to do with the development
right.
league. They were trying to do something very similar.
$50,000, $60,000 a year, something so they can live, but not, it's not exorbitant. And then they can enter the draft just like everybody else. But this is dumb. And what they also need to do is come up with a way to, whether they take a lot of their classes online or something like that, there has to be a workaround. Because one of the things Rosen talked about, and then I'll let you talk, is that he said, I have a class I need for my major, and he's an economics major, I think it is. He's like, I have a class I need for my major, but it's offered like 1 day a week during football practice.
Yeah.
Like there has to be that. I don't want to say leniency because that's the wrong word, but there has to be that sort of workaround for them.
Well, the thing is, I agree with him 100%. I definitely think there's a huge issue, and he makes a very valid point about the SAT requirements because he's 100% right. If you raise the SAT requirement at Alabama, Ohio State,
Florida,
Clemson, any of these football powerhouses,
Florida State, Miami,
forget it. These guys they'll never make it. They'll never make it.
Stanford would win the freaking cup every year.
Harvard will be in the national championship every year, right?
Notre Dame might be good.
Yeah. Finally, the fact is though is that the type of schedule these guys keep with regards to press conferences and interviews and flying to and from places and all that stuff. It's unfair to kind of expect these guys to balance that type of schedule.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people in the world who don't play football and still can't balance a schedule that they have. Right. So imagine how these guys feel trying to study for finals, then they got to get ready for a bowl game. They don't get to see their families because they're playing on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. I mean, it's pretty crazy. He's 100% right. It's actually, to be honest, very refreshing that he came out and actually said it.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't hurt his draft status. Number 6, Colts QB Andrew Luck had surgery on his throwing shoulder during the offseason, but has not practiced since spring camp opened and didn't play in the team's first preseason game against the Lions on Sunday. Making this a little worrisome is that no one knows when he'll return, including Colts owner Jim Irsay, who tweeted, quote, Luck could play opener, could miss 1 game, could miss 2, quote, hypothetically. Replacements were considered, Kaepernick was not. Should Luck miss any time during the regular season, Scott Tolzien would be the starter unless they acquire another veteran, either trade or waivers. Is it too early for the Colts fans to panic about Andrew Luck?
No, and the reason why it's not is because this tweet is very cryptic. It really, if I saw this as a Colts fan, I'd be really nervous right now because the Colts will only go the way Andrew Luck goes. They're not going to be a good team without Andrew Luck. We already know that. Okay, they don't have a very good defense. Their offensive line stinks, and the thing is, their receivers are only good if Andrew Luck is throwing them the football. The fact that he might miss a week or two, which maybe didn't seem that way when he first had the surgery, is very alarming. And if I'm a Colts fan, I'd be really nervous, especially when my owner is kind of making it lighter than it should be.
Right.
And these cryptic tweets bother me. So yeah, if I'm a Colts fan, I'm extremely nervous right now if Andrew Luck's missing games.
Yeah, and also the idea that you think that Scott Tolzien is better than Colin Kaepernick means you guys have no idea what the hell's going on in football.
But the way he kind of ends it, Kaepernick was not, means we didn't want anything to do with Colin Kaepernick.
Exactly, because we're in Indianapolis, we're in the middle of the the Midwest, and we don't want him.
It's a fact. I mean, just say it. I mean, when you end it like that, it's pretty obvious you wanted nothing to do with the guy. But the fact is, he could be your best option if Luck misses any games. And the Colts are competing for playoffs every year.
The Colts have ruined Andrew Luck's career. Let's be fair, right? With not having any offensive line in front of him, there are people that think that he should have had this operation last year. Like, he played with this last year and played through it, and then the operation this season. This is Colts management, typical under the Pagano, and I know it's a new GM, but it's the same thing. It's the same crap, right? Like, we have a new guy in charge, but it's the same thing. And so you're getting a guy who his career right now is in jeopardy, and he could have been one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen. But they didn't do anything to protect this guy. Nothing.
And with that, closing time is officially over.
Woo!
And this episode of Polar Opposites is over. And we'd like to thank everybody for listening as always. Check us out at polaropposites.podbean.com, as well as iTunes, as well as Spreaker.com. And follow us on Twitter at PolarOpposites1. No show next week. We'll be back the following week. We'll do NFC South and AFC South.
Yes.
We'll talk baseball. We'll talk basketball. We'll talk everything we can squeeze into this podcast. Whatever's the hot story of the week or weeks.
Woo!
One more time, polaropposites.podbean.com, iTunes, and Spreaker.com, and follow us on Twitter at PolarOpposites1. Enjoy the week, enjoy the games, enjoy life, enjoy everything, and we will talk again next week.
Bye.
How do you do? Hour 20?
Huh?
No, I mean, like, you said we get it an hour. You said you wanted to have 120.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna play the music for the last minute, and then fade out.
Right, so maybe what we'll do is, since we're not doing a show next week,
Yeah.
maybe the following week we'll do 2 previews. Maybe we'll try to find a way to tie it into like the segments that we're like.
Yeah, we can do that.
And stuff like that.
Absolutely.
You know, maybe to open the show, we can just talk about all 14 and just do like kind of like an NFC. Can open with if you want.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's absolutely fine with me. I think we should maybe start looking at timing the first segment.
Okay.
Because we tend to get a little extraneous. It's not just it's both of us.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
But